when you quieten your mind, everything literally falls into place. And I can't explain how it does that. It actually felt like I sat above my body and looking down on it. And for me, my day-to-day life now is totally different from what it was 2.5 years ago, in such a lovely way. Probably people are looking at this now and think, oh, you're boring old sod, but I don't really drink anymore. I eat healthily. And I feel great. I can't explain that feeling when you have a quiet mind, especially if you've got a busy mind, and I had in the past. Once you start meditating, it will seep into every aspect of your life without you knowing it, for the better. I just love my life where it is now. I love my family life. I love where I am physically, mentally, spiritually. Is that because of meditation? Yes.
In today's video, I talked to a student of mine who's been with me for 2.5 years. I've been mentoring him and teaching him meditation throughout this time. Prior to coming to me, throughout his early 20s, he suffered massively with suicidal thoughts and just generally with his mental health. Now he's in an absolutely incredible place, and I want to share his story with you and how we've worked together to get him to the place where he is now. Hope you enjoy this one.
I think a good place to start is starting with what led you initially to meditation.
So I think what led to me meditating, well, I suffered with my mental health, and so I managed to improve that through exercise and cold showers, which I still do religiously. 2.5 years in, every day I have a cold shower, and that worked to a degree. And I actually found out about you through a colleague at work, because where I was working, they wanted to run some sessions for to do meditation. And so I asked someone at work if they knew someone who would run corporate sessions to do meditation, and your name popped up. And so I started following you on Facebook, April 2020. So I started following you on Facebook a bit. Meditation was on my mind. I'd heard good things about it. When I had read Wim Hof's book, there was a part on meditation in there, and which I did a couple of times. And his method of meditation in the book was find a comfortable space, close your eyes, and it was count to 7 and count back down, and just keep in that process, count 7, count back down. And something happened in that meditation, the first one and the second one, which was I was sat in a room with lounge next door, and there's all the outside noise. I think it was early in the morning, so there were cars going past, and just the general noise of the house was going on, and generally a bit of noise probably in my head as well. And for the first time, it was like someone just opened these shutter doors, and it was like I was looking into space, to be fair. It's kind of black with some speckled, kind of, if you're describing it, like stars of it, like you're looking up at the sky. But the thing for me was that it was total silence. And what I mean by that was there was still the sounds of the clock, still the sounds of the cars outside, but my internal voice had gone totally quiet for probably about 15 seconds. And that made me realize that internally I could be quiet. After that experience, and after I'd been following you, and I remember I was watching Game of Thrones in my kitchen, and something popped up. One of your posts popped up. I think it was along the lines of, have you ever thought about meditating and quieting your mind, along those lines? And I messaged you then and there. I've probably still got that message somewhere. And I contacted you, and that evening, and you contacted me straight back. And that's where we started our journey together, you guiding me into meditation 2.5 years ago. So at the moment, I meditate pretty much every day, from anywhere from, to be fair, some days it's a short meditation, maybe 5 minutes, but most of the time it's 20, 30 minutes. If you said to your average person, right, I want you to sit down for a minute, 2 minutes, internalize yourself. I want you to focus on one thing. You wouldn't be able to do it. That internal voice would come up and just disrupt you. and it still occasionally still does that. I still sit in meditations where that internal voice might latch onto something that it doesn't like. But the difference is now it's just a sound that I watch it come and I watch it go. So yeah, it is. Meditation is really challenging. It's a beautiful journey. It's a really beautiful journey, but it's really a challenging journey as well. It's an internal journey, looking inwards. And with that, you'll get at times, for me, it's been pretty peaceful. And at times internally, it's been pretty loud.
Yeah, you learn that the chaos that you've been experiencing in your mind isn't actually you, or your chaos. Really, it's just an experience that you have, and it might be based on experiences that you've gone through and things like that. But it's not inherently you, and so
No.
You learn, don't you, through sitting down and meditating every single day, spending lots and lots of time quiet in the quiet of your mind, observing what's going on, really, and seeing how your attention is looted every 2 seconds. It's being stolen by a noise outside, or a thought, or a feeling in your body. The attention's being drifted and pulled all over the place, and you start to learn that, okay, if I just anchor myself in to this one particular focal point, or this one object, or whatever it might be, the focal point of the meditation, if I just anchor myself there and do nothing more than gently observe that area, all of this other stuff eventually stops pulling me and stops being a distraction, and the mind actually just stabilizes in the center. And that's a very simplified explanation, isn't it, for what actually happens?
And what I started to notice, there were small gaps in my thought process, whether it be at work, and these might last a second, and this would happen in the meditation as well, where you would have small gaps of just quietness, and this thing actually then goes on into your day-to-day life. You start to notice these small gaps where the mind is quiet. And I remember sat in my lounge one night. I sat on the sofa and I had that feeling that I had in that first meditation. That's where everything went quiet, and I just sat on my sofa, and there was no back chat in my mind. I know that you would just become totally present of where you are in that moment. It's very surreal. It's very surreal when there's no internal dialogue, no internal noise. And you just sit somewhere just observing around you. It's very bizarre stuff. And obviously, the more you practice meditation, the more this happens, the more aware you become, the more conscious you become of your day-to-day life. And you start to then, like we have worked on, many things, you start to pick up on little things. You start to then pick up on things that trigger you, and then you can question yourself, why do those trigger me? The example I always use, I can't remember if you told me this one, is when you and I always use this story as well. You leave the house in a great mood, you drive to work, you're driving down the road happy as Larry. There's a car in front of you on your side of the road, and you stop to let another car come past because it's right away, and the person in that car doesn't wave. And before you know it, this urge of anger comes up through your body. You're like, how dare that fucker, excuse the language, not wave at me, how dare he? And just that one moment which you latch onto and your ego latches onto completely changes your day. And you go to work, you're annoyed, it just completely ruins your day. That little voice inside of you has created a story, what an arrogant, blah, blah, blah. But then I always switch the story around to the person who's driving in the other car. And I always say, with the person who's driving in the other car is rushing to hospital because he's just found his wife has been in a car accident. And the moral of that story is internally you create these situations which essentially aren't real. And then these situations dictate your moods and things like that. And the more you meditate, the more you notice these things actually before it happens. And you can actually, before it happens, you can right, I'm going to observe that. Actually, where's that coming from? And then just let it go.
What are the major things that people struggle with now are things like stress, things like struggling with sleep, things like having no purpose or meaning in their life, mental health, being just tormented by their own mind, being totally overwhelmed by their own mind, people really struggling with regulating their emotions. They're overcome by anger or sadness or jealousy, different emotions. And would you say that meditation for you, as someone who's been on the other side with regards to your mental health suffering years ago, would you say that meditation has been a big pivotal point in that journey in terms of improving those things?
Yes. For me, meditation sits over everything. Meditation sits over exercise of your day-to-day habits. It's something that binds all of those together. We were talking about this earlier before we started doing this. It's a really beautiful, peaceful journey. It's so lovely and nice. And for me, my day-to-day life now is totally different from what it was 2.5 years ago, in such a lovely way. I mean, and probably people might look at this now and think, "Oh, you boring old sod," but I don't really drink anymore. I eat healthily. And I feel great. I feel great for that.
And you've done like the meditation techniques that we've been through over 2.5 years.
Yeah.
For the people watching, we tend to change after around 6 months typically.
Yeah.
So we'll work on one technique, one very boring, very plain technique for 6 months. That's
I
what
wouldn't,
it's.
I wouldn't say it's boring.
we know that it's not boring, and you understand that it's not boring.
Right, when you sit there for 20 minutes and focus on your breath, they might think that's boring, but that's essentially your ego side of it saying it's boring. Yeah. When you get to a point where, when I first started meditating, I had some really weird experiences. They were very lively and colourful, that kind of thing. And in that respect, they were quite busy, but that can change. But we also have to learn in meditations, we don't latch onto those visual things. They come and they go, and if they're not there, they're not there. So for me, my meditations now, I generally go quite in deep quite quickly, whereas before it would used to take 10 or 15 minutes. Now it's probably 5 minutes. There'll be a point when you're still following your breath, but in a way you're not so much aware of it, and you just go deeper, and it's so peaceful. It's like just sit there and go internally, it's just like quiet. It's phenomenal. And then by doing that, that's what I mean. This starts to seep in your day-to-day life.
We tend to normally meet up every single week, and occasionally we'll do different techniques just to have some variation and show you different things, different styles of meditation and things. But over the course of the 2.5 years, for like your meditation, if you like, the meditation that you use for the duration of the week, you've had about 5, I think. And they're for that reason, it refines you in a different way, and it challenges you in a different way. So having that variation is nice, I think. But you've never really experienced what most people experience when they start meditation in terms of entry through an app or a guided version of meditation too much. You've gone quite, probably the best way really, which is gone direct and got learn an actual technique straight away and just work straight on that. Not the best way for everyone necessarily, I suppose. Some people wouldn't be able to manage that necessarily, and they might need a gentler introduction, more an easygoing introduction. But for you went straight in and learned. We took you through Anapana or Vipassana meditation, we call it, and that was the starting point, wasn't it? From there on,
that was the starting point for 6 months, and I think we went to Traktaka, didn't we? That was Candle Gates in for 6 months.
Yeah,
which is an interesting one. So that's literally just staring at the tip of the candle flame and observing it, and completely kind of just immersing yourself in it. That was 6 months. I can't remember what we did after that one.
We went from that one to, we did Vipassana, candle gazing.
Did we do colour?
Was the square or the colour after that?
Yeah, the square was, that was it. The square was one. The outline.
Square.
Yeah. Square.
Square. Tibetan colour meditation.
Yeah.
And then
the one at the moment.
Yeah.
It's there at the end of your nose. Which is hard.
So what a lot of people won't maybe understand with meditation is that what are you actually gaining from observing, your breath, or observing a candle flame, or following a mantra? There are obviously specific, deeper benefits of each one, which we won't bother talking about today. But in terms of like getting your mind and yourself really very good at observing nothing is essentially what you're training your mind to do. I like to call it a process of neutralizing your mind or simplifying your mind, because you'll put your mind on the breath, you'll start to observe that process of feeling the air coming in through your nose as an example, and your mind will want to shoot off, and you basically don't react to any of the activity that the mind presents, whether it wants to move around, whether it wants to comment and talk about what's happening, whether you're feeling annoyed or frustrated, or any activity that the mind presents, you essentially neutralize that by just coming directly back to the object that you're observing. And when you do that over and over again, hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of 6 months or a year or 2.5 years for you, your mind starts to realize gradually over time that he's not just going to pander to my calls and my my monologue and everything else. And so it starts to subside. All of that activity subsides, and with that you find that it's actually then very easy, and more than easy, it's actually very beautiful to sit there without any stimulation whatsoever, and just follow the rhythm of your breathing. You can actually do that and be perfectly content and peaceful without any other stimulus, without anything else going on.
But the vast majority of people, just because of the way they are, they'd sit there and their mind would just inherently want to go somewhere else and do something else and be like, oh, this is
very quickly.
Yeah, really quickly.
Do you feel now at this where it'd be very, very hard for you to ever slip back to the mental state, you could say, that you were in the period of your mental health crisis? No, not at all.
You
feel like things have you've worked things out in your own mind and trained it really?
Yeah, I work things well. It's quite, again, this is a really in strange thing, and we all do. I used to do it where it will project itself. For example, say I've got a meeting next week at work, and if you just mind's free to do what it will do, it will project itself and say, well, that meeting's going to be shit, such and such person's there, you're not good enough at presenting, and before you know it, you're having a panic attack and you're sat in your kitchen at home and the meeting's still somewhere down the future. And so I remember something happening once I started to meditate, and I read this book, and you start to look at things differently. I remember I had a really powerful meditation once, and I've told you about this, and this is one I was meditating, and I had this this vision internally that I was on a boat, and all my traumas from the past were on this small boat behind me, and there was a rope attaching the two of us, and I cut the rope and watched this boat with all these past traumas just drift away. And it's the only meditation I came out of, and I cried. And it was, for me, I believe it was just realizing actually I don't have to drag these traumas on. I haven't forgotten about things that have happened in the past, but I know now that the mind is very good at twisting things and dragging things up, which are essentially, like I said, they're just figments of my imagination. They're not real anymore. They're not in the present with me. And yeah, and it was a very powerful moment for me of just binning stuff off in a way, like shedding those layers of the Russian doll and just getting rid of it.
Very powerful, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like it's like a cloud that follows you around. It's not in the, like you say, it's nothing related to the present,
no,
but this memory, this psychological trauma, or this emotional energy that's wrapped up in it is just trailing along with you,
yeah,
following you around and interrupting what is a perfectly good
yeah,
period, could be a perfectly good period of your life, perfectly
totally, totally.
nothing's going wrong in your life, yet you've got this cloud following you
Mm,
around. And there's
totally, and
actually
it's
meditations. There are actually specific meditations that you can do to overcome trauma like that.
mm,
Funnily enough, some of them involve visualizing things in certain ways and cutting the ties between them and things like that. There are specific ones that you can do. So it's quite, although we didn't go through that process, that was
just
just a
came
natural,
nowhere.
yeah, it's just a natural thing that happened for you.
I'll have days now. Well, I can go for a whole day and get to the end of the day and have no, there'd be no like chit chat and general waffle in the head. It'd just been totally quiet. But the great thing now is when you have that, it's a lot easier to consciously think about something. So what I mean by that, if we take for example, when I talked about how if your mind just runs right, and we talked about if you got a meeting next week and it all can create all these situations which aren't real, but actually you can consciously think about what that means. So actually, I can consciously, right, I've got a meeting next week. How am I going to approach it? What am I going to do? Is there certain people there I need to, who are going to be a pain or something like that? So you can, it's a lot, things are a lot more clear and you can consciously think about things in a lot more rational way. And then you can go, right, I've done that, and just continue on with your quiet life in your head, which isn't boring. It's not boring, by the way. People will think, oh my God, I must have such a boring life. It's not boring. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's how the mind should be. The
Mm.
mind should be quiet like that. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
bombarded with thoughts and jumping around and chaos, which people assume is normal and assume, yeah, it would be boring without that. And I think the other big misconception that a lot of people have, and this is generally, I've found at least from people who haven't actually done the rigor with meditation and haven't really practiced it enough, is that they assume that you can't quieten your mind with meditation, and that there is that everyone has thoughts, which is true, but the rate of thoughts that you have can be greatly reduced, and that's what we have experienced through doing meditation, is that you for example have quietened your mind to a great degree, and you've got thoughts, of course, but there's a hell of a lot less.
Yeah.
That your mind is not as cluttered, it's not as chaotic, it's not as unstable rather, as it used to be, and
You can,
that's the difference.
yeah, you can, don't get me wrong, you can still have days where I still have days where my mind can be really busy, and essentially you have no control over that. Sometimes thoughts or the voices, that chatty voice can come in your head and it will just be there. But the difference is now I can accept that. And actually and once you start meditating for a long time, you can start to observe it. It's like clouds. They come and they go. It's like a wave. You can observe it. You can watch it come. You can watch it go. And you can decide, well, actually, I think that thought or whatever that is a load of bollocks, and I'm just going to let you sail on. But yeah, the stuff that is just general drivel, which is sometimes you still get, you learn to observe that and accept it. And in that acceptance, you don't then fight against it. And I often think if you have these things going on and you then confront it, you then internally have this kind of like standoff, which isn't then good, because then you'll become frustrated with it. If you're like, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want that thought, I don't want that thought, you'll then become frustrated because it essentially will still be there. If you accept it, that sometimes, on occasions, my mind is busy, I accept that, and it's like I said, I watch them, they come like clouds and they go again.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what you do in the practice, in the meditation practice, is like, it's really it's almost like putting a magnifying glass on a small section of your daily life and it kind of expanding that, because a lot of what you learn about yourself and how to manage yourself and how to manage your thoughts and emotions and different things in a meditation, it's almost like a mini life experience in a way, because you're so concentrated on what's going on in your own mind when you sit there and meditate, and you get so used to not being drawn in by really pleasurable thoughts, not being drawn in by negative thoughts, not being drawn in by different emotions that come up or different experiences going on around you that you aren't supposed to be acknowledging at that time. You get used to being the observer of your experience, basically, don't you? And not allowing anything outside of yourself to actually pull you in any direction that they want to pull you. Essentially, you start to gain control of yourself. And that same mini experience that happens in a meditation practice is exactly what happens in life when you're, like you said, driving to work and someone doesn't say thank you, and a part of you wants to swear at them and tell them to piss off, but you don't. You feel that sensation, that desire, and you don't get pulled by it. You find your center still. There's lots of different circumstances and situations where things arise in us, or thoughts arise, or we have distractions in our daily life, but you learn through that practice of meditation, through that concentrated period of time, how to manage it. And it becomes natural then, doesn't it? It doesn't become as much. You do have to be conscious about it, of course, but there's always to a lesser degree, I would say, as you get better, you're more naturally becoming aware. You're more naturally observing your experiences and not being drawn in by everything, which is a big sign of progression.
I remember, it's like I was saying in Day to Day as well. I remember, I can't remember how many months this was in, and your ego and your internal mind is very judgmental. And I remember when we started looking at that, and you were like, I want you to observe actually when, and you'll be surprised. I would say this to anyone, give it a go, because you'll be like, wow, how that internal dialogue is so judgmental of so many things, people, anything. It could be absolutely anything. That tree's prettier than that tree. That person is fat. That person's too thin. I don't like that coat. Those trainers are crap. It's just that it's really. And I remember when I started doing that, and there was a certain person at work. It just was really just really didn't like. And to be fair, there was nothing wrong with this person. Just internally, my ego, my mind didn't like them. But when he started watching that, and it was like observing it was such a. I remember it was such a powerful thing. Actually, when you start to observe these things and realize, that's not me. That's not who I am. Because for me, it's not about happiness. Through meditation, it's this we've talked about this many times. It's this real fine line of not happiness, because the opposite of happiness is being sad, and it's somewhere in between. The best way to describe it is being content. It's being content with what I have. It's like having one foot in happiness and one foot in sadness, and you ride that middle line. That middle. It's not. Oh, hey, it's not. It's just somewhere so. It's somewhere so, in a way, peaceful and beautiful.
It's an experience, isn't it?
yeah, it's such an experience. It's like if someone said to me, Bill, you know, my car's all right. If my car's a car, it gets me from A to B, and it's a nice motor. It's probably better than I thought I'd ever have. But if someone said to me, Bill, you're going to have to go back to driving your Kia Picanto tomorrow, I'd be like, yeah, all right. And it's about things like that, not in. And I think when you get in this frame of mind, things don't affect you so much like that, and it's this
Yeah.
contentness you have.
Think you don't get as you're not your mind isn't as sticky, and
No,
emotions and experiences and objects and things that you've got don't cling to them as much. You can enjoy them whilst you've got them, and you do.
yeah,
You should, but there's no latching now. There's this freedom to be able to let go of things, and that definitely.
no, it's attached to nothing.
Yeah, there you go.
Attached to nothing, and it's really and these are all things I used to write down loads of stuff when not so much now, but all stuff.
Yeah, show some of that stuff you've got written on the front there for people that might.
So this one,
So that people can see.
commitment, intent, curiosity, motivation, attached to nothing. Don't judge, observe but don't attach. Balance, follow the breath, be aware, keep pushing.
These are some of the principles that we went through. I
Yeah.
think
Commitment, intent, motivation. Another great one I liked when I first started meditating was removing labels.
Yeah,
That might sound really weird to people. Removing labels from things.
you love it.
Yeah, that's because because that's the ego, the sense of I is very good at things being separate from ourselves. And when we remove labels from things, what are they? What are, when we remove labels from ourselves? And I remember you saying this. I remember we did a meditation on it, and we had to take things and pretend they were being put in a box. And one of them was your name, was to take your name, which is a label, and put it in the box. And actually, after you remove your name, what are you? Yeah. And I just love that whole concept of thing. And for me, part of that spiritual journey is essentially, for me, everything is kind of one. It's a oneness, but create this separate. Our egos create this separate thing. But essentially, I mean, that's when you go quite deep into stuff about essentially everything is energy. We're all energy. Yeah. Everything is energy. Everything is different vibrational levels. I have been listening to you there.
This is the knowledge now pouring out. Good to see.
But when you start to look at that, and if you think everything just comes, if everything's energy, everything comes from one specific source.
Yeah.
Actually, we're all connected. Everything is connected. And when you start to do that, it's such a beautiful thing. You start to just break down these barriers, which internally people create. It's pretty special.
Yeah, that's like a side sort of practice, isn't it? Off of, like, you've got the meditation, which is the initial thing that you do, which is sit down for 20, 30 minutes, whatever it is for each person. But then off of that, the rest of the way that you look at the world and the way that you look at everything really starts to change a little bit, doesn't it? And then you start to have different views, like we're talking about now, this broader perspective where you start realizing that everything isn't quite as you thought it was, and that everything, we're very conditioned to see the world in a certain way. And when you start peeling away the layers of that conditioning, things become clearer. So all of a sudden, everything isn't quite as separate as it seems when we create the separation in our mind. When we start to peel that away, it becomes clearer and clearer. And you then blending the experience that you're having in a meditation where you're starting to peel away the identity in a way. You're starting to experience yourself as consciousness more.
Mm.
Once you start having those experiences, plus you're reconditioning the way you're thinking throughout the day, it's a drastic improvement generally in just your whole experience, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, totally. I tend to fast most days, so I don't eat between 6 in the evening and 10 in the morning. I just don't eat.
Yeah.
And in between those times, if I'm hungry, I'll eat. If it gets towards 6 o'clock in the evening and I'm not hungry, I'll just go through. And it just made me realise that, we do stuff because we've been told we should do it, and we never question it. We never go,
Yeah.
actually, I'm eating 3 meals a day. I'm sat in an office for 8 hours a day, so my calorie probably, I'm not burning a lot, yet I'm still eating all this food. And we never, I think what you start to do is when you go on this journey, you start to just look at things and question things more. Actually,
You have a different perspective, don't you?
yeah,
You
yeah,
have a less rigid perspective, I
mm,
suppose. You
yeah,
just you're looking from a. It's almost like you're looking from a broader perspective.
different level.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does feel like that, and you're able to. I find it a lot with when controversial things are happening in the world or in an environment that I'm in, and people always fall into good and bad. I like this person. I don't like that person. This one's good. This one's not so good. And I find that personally, from my experience with this and how I've noticed myself change is, I never really like someone or really hate someone. I find that there's quite often lots of positives from each side that I can pick up on, equally negatives, and it's a more of a open. From my experience, I believe it's a more well-rounded way of looking at
Mm,
circumstances. And
yeah,
I've definitely noticed other people who are meditators have often got a similar way of looking at the world, never
yeah,
quite as black and white as what you
no.
normally see on the news and things like that. In terms of like where you see yourself going now and life having meaning and that side of things, like do you have like that sense of fulfillment? And be honest, if do you have that? And if you do have that, is there any relation with the meditation and spiritual kind of journey in terms of like enhancing that?
Yeah, I think my life has purpose, and I think I'm really happy with where my life is. I am where I'm meant to be. And to be fair, I'm very fortunate. I love my job anyway. Part of my, I develop food products, but part of that I get to do charity stuff as well, which is which I love. I love just being able to do stuff for other people who aren't as fortunate as myself. Yeah, I just love my life where it is now. I love my family life. Love where I am physically, mentally, spiritually. Is that because of meditation? Yes. Meditation is like anything. It's like if you go on a diet, you stop going on a diet and eat shit food again, you're just going to end up where you were. So, and it's a journey, and I continue to grow with it. I can lose 10 stone, and you can physically see that. I think when you're doing meditation, you work on yourself internally. Yeah, you can see physical aspects of me with regards to when I do exercise and things like that, and again, I think meditation sits all over that. When I go out, I used to do quite a bit of trail running, and I stopped, and now I've started again, and I absolutely love it now. I love it now because I'm very present when I run. I'm not driven by the ego, which loves to look at time, distance. Am I running fast enough? I go out and run, and it's the way you laugh. I love bagpipes, Scottish music, and and that's my playlist, which I go out running to, and I absolutely love it. I just feel just so free, and it's just so beautiful. And I'll go out for an hour, and I don't give a shit how far I run, how fast I've
Yeah.
run. I go out, I'm just there, and through meditation as well. It's really interesting because we do breath work. You've taught me how to do breath work, some
Hmm.
qigong. I've done the Wim Hof method before. I do pranayama, and all of this helps with when you do exercise. If
Hmm.
you're on, if you don't have music on, your voice decides to pop up again, you can then just focus on your breathing, and you'd be amazed when you focus on your breathing when you run it and how much easier it becomes. So yeah, for me, I continue to go out into my little room every morning out the back here and meditate. Well, usually about 6 in the morning for 20 to 30 minutes, and that will continue. Because I think because of the change I've seen in 2.5 years, it makes you, and I'm having, so for the first year, my meditations were quite active and stuff like that. And then for about a year, they weren't. They were really quiet. But that wasn't a bad thing. You take them as they are, you don't judge them. They just were quiet. They were what they were, completely different to the other ones. And there's quite a big shift at the moment, I feel, especially with this new meditation, I think, which is focusing on the end of my nose, which I'd never been able to do that before in my life. So learning how to do that is quite hard. And somebody try it if you wanted to try focusing both eyes on the end of your nose for 20 minutes. It's quite hard to start with. But I think you are
fairly advanced.
And I've seen feel quite a big shift at the moment with this, with regards just to how I feel energy-wise, internally, day-to-day wise, and I know there's been a big shift because this week the ego's just been kicking off massively, just randomly, being quite loud, and you generally know when that happens, something's happening. Today it's been quiet, so you go through these periods of growth, then it'll quieten down again. You'll go through these other periods of growth. So for me, at the moment, when I meditate, I have these real senses of just really built up energy in my body, especially in my arms and in my lower part of my torso, and they rise to a certain point and then they dissipate again. I've had another one was recently where I had actually felt like I sat above my body and looking down on it, which is another one. Literally sat there just looking, probably from about, I don't know, probably from a meter above myself, looking down on myself. I'm sure some people might think, oh my God.
Which pretty much cements any theory that you had that you're not the physical self when you start having experiences like that. And naturally you can't help weaving, sort of looking down a spiritual avenue then, can't you? Because I
remember when I first started meditating, you call it blasting, but I've made it buzzing, and it's just this really loud, weird sensation I would have around the top of my head. It's like this really whirring sound, like really loud, like, and it was just like, what the hell is going on here? But yeah, apparently that's one of the things that happens, energy. And that comes and goes. That in the first year, that was really, really prominent. I remember reading some of the some books as well, which are quite spiritual. I remember sitting down with one book one night, and we just like clicking, just like that. It's just like, woo. You are
all of the energy around the top there.
Yeah. And I've had more of that recently. That's come back again, which makes me feel things are shifting.
It's the good thing about it, isn't it? It's the endpoint's almost what you want it to be. Some people in certain traditions and of certain beliefs would say that once you peel away all the layers and you then reach a stage of enlightenment where you basically return back to the source, or the part of yourself that is the very essence of yourself. For other people, they're not as fussed about that, and it's more just about the practical or the mental changes that are happening, and everyone's slightly different.
The board at work is just filled with so many different quotes. I still got my spoon on it, which says everything is one on it. First thing you asked me to do, I saw this great quote the other day, which was, and I wrote it down because I just thought it's so brilliant. And it was the first bit says, the ego says, when everything is in place, I will find my peace of mind. Spirit says, when you find your peace of mind, everything falls into place. When you quieten your mind, everything literally falls into place. Now I can't explain how it does that. It just what I know what I mean by that. Everything just feels right. You stop chasing. It's like the ego says, well, once I have that and I have that and I have that and I have that and I have that, then everything will be great in my life and it'll be sorted. And you'll get to that point and your ego will go, well, actually, no, I'm not quite happy again. And you'll go on to the next thing. But when you find that peace of mind, then this is the contentment I'm talking about. You find contentment in where you are and whatever you're doing, and everything just kind of slots into place.
So that is Bill's story. I hope you enjoyed the video today. I hope it's inspired you to continue meditating or to start meditating if you don't already. And get on with the work and do the spiritual practice and reap the rewards of doing this work. So I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you on the next one.